let's hear from our next speaker. He's the head of engineering of IOTA Foundation. Please join me in welcome Mr. Edward Greve. Mr. Greve, please.
Hey, good afternoon. So I'm here to talk about IOTA. So I just want to get a sense. Could you raise your hand if you've heard of IOTA before? So I can. Okay, like 25%. Cool. So I know the topic of the session is blockchain, and IOTA is not a blockchain, as Mr. Huang pointed out a little while ago. So I guess we'll see why that is and why IOTA is here. About me, my name's Edward. I'm head of engineering at the IOTA Foundation. So this is not really my wheelhouse, actually, to give this presentation. I'm really deep into the tech, into the IOTA protocol and the running servers and all this stuff. But I will do my best to impart upon you why we think IOTA is a really good solution for the things that we're going to talk about. So, welcome to the connected era. And what this really starts from, what our project really starts from, is as we've seen years ago and through today mainly, data sources are really silos, right? And we think of Facebook or Google or Microsoft or whatever as these data collecting silos. They aggregate data, they keep it, and they hoard it, right? And they don't want to share it because their data is their value. That's where they actually make their money. And so what we've seen is that if you can share even just a little bit of data, you can actually do some pretty cool things, right? For example, we've seen like ride-sharing services come up now, where you can just call on the street and they share enough data to make it work so you can get a taxi from some random person. But what if you could go further than that, right? What if you could take this to sort of the extreme? So data is the new oil, right? This is what I was just talking about. It's if you can figure out how to leverage your data, you can do some really, really cool stuff. And if you can make data public even, then you could do even more cool stuff. What we're really talking about is this machine economy. And it's the idea that at the end of the day, the digital world and the physical world, they do have to meet, right? All the stuff that we're talking about, all the stuff about venture capital or blockchain or new technologies or distributed ledgers or whatever, at the end of the day, it's about people, right? And what we see is that technology gets more and more integrated into our lives as people. And that it's actually helpful for us to be able to communicate with those around us using our devices, using different technologies, maybe to live in a city but have a more optimized way of moving around the city, right? We need a lot of data flow to do that. And one thing that we talk about a lot is IoT, of course, but we never really talk about the economy of things. And that's really what this boils down to, right? Each participant in this machine economy is really one piece of the economy of things, right? Each sensor, each traffic light, each cell phone, each car on the road, they're all providing data as part of the economy of things. And what IOTA attempts to do is to bring all these things together. Right now, they're all separate, right? My cell phone can't talk directly to my car. I mean, I can get like a dongle, and then I can go through some interface and some software. But wouldn't it be cool if my cell phone could talk directly to my car, or to a manufacturing facility that manufactures this remote, or even to the remote directly, or to the microphone, or if any of the devices that we had were sort of on a more standardized protocol that we could just share the data between them, right? Right now we're still in this mode of keeping data separate and keeping it for ourselves, and we're not really there yet. So what we're really talking about in IOTA is this concept of an autonomous economic agent, right? A device, like let's say a car, for example, it provides some utility somewhere, right? Someone's interested in using it. I'm interested in getting in the car and going to the shop, right? Or coming here to Computex. And what we want to be able to do is have these devices as they get smarter, right? Everything is smart now. We've got smartphones and smart cars and smart factories. As the devices get smarter, we want them to be able to just sort of do things on their own. I don't want to always have to, be aware of, oh, my car now has to go into the shop for maintenance, or, oh, I better go this way instead of that way, and I have to drive it there myself. What if the car can just make those decisions for me, right? What if it could know, okay, it's time for maintenance, I can go to the shop, I can pay myself for the maintenance that I require. What if it knows that it's time to go get charged, and it can just find a parking spot and charge up, and it can pay for all that stuff itself, right? It doesn't have to ask me. I would pay for it anyway, but let's just let the car do it on its own. Why not? So this is all about that interconnectivity, right, of the machine economy. That's what we're really aiming for. So you can imagine, if you sort of go with me here, it's very visionary, right? This is not, I don't think we're there yet in the real world. I mean, we've got stuff like Yo-Yo Card in Taiwan or Alipay or WeChat where you can pay for a lot of different things with your phone, but that's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about taking it a full step further and saying, what if the devices that we use could actually just do these things themselves? It's not about me paying for it. It's about the device knowing what it needs to do and being able to do it autonomously. So there's a few things that we would need to get there, right? Of course, we would need to be able to trust that the data our devices are giving us is good, right? What if your car goes to one shop and pays some money, and then it goes to another shop and pays some money again? How does the shop know whether it actually got these tokens? I mean, this is a classic problem in digital currency, right? Is the double spending problem. Maybe you've heard of it, where I give you money, and then I give you money, and neither of you knows whether I actually had enough to give the money to both, or I claim to give you both the same tokens. We also need seamless transactions, right? It can't be that I have to give you some tokens or say, here's my IOU, and then you wait a day or a week later and you find out whether you got it or not. It has to be instant, right? That's why we use like credit cards or our line pay or whatever when we're paying in the shop, so we can beep and we know right away that the transaction was successful. So we need to have that. If we don't have seamless transactions, it's not going to work. And we need smarter business models, right? We can't have business models that are based on just one guy figuring, oh, let's just do this and pushing it on everybody because he's got enough money to do so. What we really need is people to come together and help co-create this environment that we're talking about. So how do we get there? Well, this is where blockchain comes in, right? So blockchain to the rescue, hooray. So back in 2008, I guess, although blockchain, the idea really started earlier than that, I think in the early 90s, originally started for time-stamping documents to prove the time that a document was issued. It was very academic. But in 2008, the first kind of blockchain that we're talking about was invented by some pseudonymous guy called Satoshi Nakamoto. And the idea was that you would have data in the blockchain, and the data could be any kind of data that you like, or it could be value, right? That's your Bitcoin. And that you could replicate this data across all of the participants of the network, and so that anytime a transaction happens, you can tell, yes, this is a valid transaction, no, it's not. Even though you're not the one issuing the transaction, you're not the one checking the transaction, there's still a way to do this validation. You're not able to tamper with the data, so everything's secure. You could even encrypt the data, so everything could be private, right? So this is great. We've got a solution now, right? So it's 10 years later. It's 10 years after the blockchain was sort of introduced in 2008. So I guess we can just use blockchain everywhere for everything now in 2018, right? Not really. Not so fast. So there's a few problems with blockchain. And the main one is basically that it's a very linear process. So I like to point, but I know you can't see if you're looking at those screens there. So the blocks come out in a blockchain linearly over time, right? And there's a fixed amount of time between each block. Let's say it's 10 minutes. right? So from one block to the next, you have to wait 10 minutes. And inside of each block are those transactions and that data that you're really interested in. So that means if I give you some Bitcoins, you've got to wait at least 10 minutes to see if it shows up in the next block. Well, that's not too great, right? Because we talked about seamless transactions and having it beep, there it is. So it's not going to work with something like Bitcoin. And then there's another thing. We have, in traditional blockchain styles, we have a very large number of transactions that are interested in sort of packing into this block. Maybe everybody in the room wants to send a transaction right now. But a block actually can only fit so many. In Bitcoin, a block, let's take this hypothetical blockchain here and say it can only fit 5 blocks, 5 transactions in a block. Okay, Bitcoin is like a few hundred or something, and different blockchains have different sizes, but let's say it's 5. So what does that mean? Well, we've got 6 transactions here that want to go in at the same time, so only 5 can fit. So how do we know which 5 to take? Well, it's the 5 that pay the most fee, right? There's always a fee to transfer money. No different with blockchain. So we say, okay, I've got a $15 fee, $13 fee, down to the $10 fee. Those fit. And the $9 fee guy, oh, sorry, out of luck. Try again next time. Go for the next block. Wait another 10 minutes to see if you get in the next time around, right? So you can see where this is going, right? What we basically end up with blockchain is this classic bottleneck, where there's too many transactions. They all want to get into the blockchain. They have to pay a lot of fees to make sure that they actually get in, and they're very slow, right? So in Bitcoin, actually, you have to wait about an hour for your transaction to be confirmed. Other blockchains are a little bit faster, for sure, but they have the same kind of bottleneck problem at the end of the day. But there's a takeaway from blockchain, and this is the really, really key insight to me, is that in the past, when we talked about P2P, like back in the early days of BitTorrent, for example, we're talking just about data, right? We can transfer data arbitrarily between 2 people that don't know each other. We can do it securely, and that's all well and good. But what Bitcoin really introduced, to me at least, was the idea that now we can actually take value, right? Like money that's in your bank account or your pocket, and we can actually do the same thing that BitTorrent does with data now with money, which is very, very cool if you think about it. Transferring money through a distributed network from person A to person B. They don't know each other, but the protocol allows them to trust each other and to do it securely. So this is, for me, the big takeaway of blockchain, traditional blockchain and Bitcoin. And the concept is, how do we fix it, sort of? How do we fix that bottleneck problem? So what IOTA presents is, we call it a technology for the era of trust. It's the IOTA Tangle. This here is the Tangle. It is not a blockchain. It is a blockless chain, if you have to use the word block in there. But the way that it's constructed, it allows for the kind of scalability that a traditional blockchain would just never get, right? There's one really, really important takeaway from this as well, which is that in IOTA, it is a true peer-to-peer value transfer. So I transfer money to you. I also do my own security work on the back end, and I don't have to pay a fee because of that. So in a traditional blockchain, you've all heard of miners, right? We set up these huge mining rigs, and we expect them to secure the tokens in the Bitcoin blockchain. In IOTA, we don't have miners. In IOTA, every user does a little bit of securing the Tangle for themselves, and they contribute that to the other users on the network. So you can think it's kind of like pay to play, but here you're not actually paying money, you're just paying a little bit of processing time on your computer, maybe like 5 seconds, something like that. So IOTA attempts to address all of these needs that we just talked about, right? It really attempts to address the integrity of the data, the security, all of this stuff. And importantly, ideally, it will be able to address this seamless payment system so that I can beep my payment, it goes through, it's accepted, and we can see it appear in the Tangle. We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for the next block. It also, I'll say IOTA, the technology, but also IOTA Foundation, us, we're really, really pro smart business models and co-creation and permissionless innovation, we call it. Right? So we're very big on having people come together, look at the technology, say, here's these problems that blockchain was meant to solve and didn't. It failed. And now we have a new solution. We call it IOTA. What can we do with it? Can you figure out how to leverage the Tangle and build applications that can solve these three things? Right? IOTA Foundation, at the end of the day, we're not really in the application building business. We're in the technology providing business. And we're always looking for partners and people around the world to help come together and see how can we actually use this technology. But we have some solutions for these things. So if you need to trust the data, if you need to make sure that it's cryptographically secure, that your data was conveyed privately, let's say on the internet, like you're using HTTPS everywhere now, right? Everybody knows to check HTTPS, little green lock sign, then you put your password in. If there's no lock sign, no password. So we need something like that. We need some kind of payment solution, right, where we can easily plug in and send our tokens, and somebody else can verify them. We've kind of got things going on here. So for trust in the data, we have solutions like MAM, which is a second layer solution on top of the Tangle, and it allows you to send encrypted data now and sort of stream encrypted data through the Tangle. Maybe stream is a bad word because it makes you think of like streaming audio or streaming video. Here we're talking about a data stream. We've got things like flash channels, which really allow you to just beep, there's your tokens, and you can verify it. And there's actually some tokens, which maybe I won't name in particular, but some tokens have been working on these off-channel payment solutions that are lightning fast. And they haven't really been able to do it successfully. Well, IOTA already has flash channels, so you can just use that. And for smart business models and co-creation, we recently introduced, maybe you've seen on our website, a new second layer solution, if you want to think of it like that, called Cubic. But we do plan to introduce smart contracts into the IOTA ecosystem and be able to leverage all the goodness there. One interesting note about Cubic, in case nobody's heard of, has anybody heard of Cubic yet? Nobody, great. So Cubic is IOTA's smart contract and outsourced computing solution. It uses the idea of a quorum-based computation. So in Ethereum, for example, which is the traditional smart contract platform everybody thinks of, all of the Ethereum nodes run all of the computations. It's very wasteful, it takes a long time. In IOTA's smart contract solution, a small amount of nodes will run a computation and reach a quorum, right, a consensus, just a few nodes. And you can repeat that over and over the network, so you don't need to have all the nodes doing all the things all the time. Very, very energy intensive and wasteful. OK, so importantly, what we're doing as the IOTA Foundation is bringing different groups of industry together, right? Like I said, we have some ideas, sure, about any of these things, but we're not necessarily experts in all of these fields, although we're trying to bring more in. But our goal really is to develop this standard before and with the industry, right? And the with part is very important here. And so we've brought in industry players from all different fields, from mobility. So we have people from Volkswagen, from you name it. I mean, I'll show you a slide later. There's like 50 different businesses that are already starting to use different parts of IOTA and that we work with regularly. So the idea is that if we're able to get a standardized platform across all of these kind of industries, and a lot more than what's up here, right? That IOTA can really become the backbone of this new Internet of Things, economy of things, right? So let's do a little bit of sort of ideation. So maybe you need to close your eyes and imagine, right? But let's talk about a local ecosystem where we envision that IOTA would work. Okay? So here's your local community. you've got some cars, you've got some buildings, and everything is smart. So I won't say smart car, smart building. I'll just say car and building, but they're all smart. And they're all hooked into the IOTA ecosystem, right? So you wake up, and your alarm's going off on your phone. Well, your phone was charged overnight by the battery of the car of your neighbor, right? Because you can now transact IOTA tokens and something like energy in real time in a trustless way. So peer-to-peer phone charging, why not? And then you go out and you get in your car, and your car, you turn it on, and it says, oh, I need to go to the shop to get my tires rotated or whatever. Why don't you take this other car? And so it gives you the temporary access to use somebody else's car who's available for the day to go drive to work. And then you get on the road, and it says, OK, if you drive on this road, there's too many cars right now. The toll will be higher. So let's go another route, and we can pay some lower tolls. Right? So this is what we're talking about here, where the whole economy is integrated into a smart economy, right? A machine economy. So back to some more down-to-earth examples, let's say. So we talk about smart charging, which I just mentioned. This is actually something that we can already do. So in this example, we have a car that has an IOTA wallet in it, and it's paying a stream of micropayments, right? So these are very, very small payments. And by the way, if any of you have been involved with working with Visa or something before, you'll know that you can't do micropayments, right? Because there's a minimum payment amount of 25 cents or something like that. So if you tried to do a 1 cent payment, you'd be paying fees 25 times higher than your payment. Doesn't make any sense. But IOTA allows you to do micropayments because there's no fee. And you can use something like a flash channel to do it very quickly. And at the same time, on the sensor, on the charge station, you have an electric meter that can send out energy to the battery in exchange for these tokens, right? So a little bit of tokens in, a little bit of energy out. And the cycle repeats, and the car gets charged, paying for its own energy without any human intervention. Very cool stuff. It already exists. You don't need smart contracts. You don't need anything extra. I think there's a slide here. So this is the world's first IOTA charging station. So this is a micro-scale model or a mini-scale model, but it does actually work. The IOTA tokens and the energy go through the same cable, right? So there's this charging cable that hooks into the model Tesla, hooks into the charge port, and the IOTA tokens flow both ways. You can see a proof of concept of the charge port up there, which is where the actual energy meter measures how much energy is used and how many tokens it needs to send the next bit of energy across. So it already exists. Very, very cool stuff. Another thing we've done in the mobility sector is worked on secure over-the-air updates. So this has been a sort of new phenomenon to cars, maybe not to cell phones, but getting updates over the air. It's very important, obviously, for something like a car to get that update securely and be able to know with very, very high confidence that the update was coming from the manufacturer, that it should be installed on this model, that whatever all of those variables are correct. And it also is very important that, let's say, a third party, let's say the regulatory agency, some transportation administration, has oversight here, right? And that it can know, some car manufacturer, your cars are out of date. You don't have the latest emission standards in there. You have to update your software, right? So there's a lot of important things that need to happen to make sure that OTA updates for cars are done correctly and securely. And IOTA actually provides a way to do this, and we have a working proof of concept for this. I don't think I have a slide for it in here, but it's very, very basic, but very cool. Your car would send a message to the Tangle saying what version of the software it runs, and then when an update comes in, the specific VIN number of the car, the version number of the update all gets stored into the Tangle, and then a third party like the Transportation Administration can come in and audit and say, by manufacturer, by VIN number, which version of the software is running on your fleet of cars. Very cool stuff. But we can even go beyond land-based mobility, right? Mobility is not just limited to the land. And now we've been hearing for the last couple of years already about Amazon is getting ready to introduce drone deliveries. Well, maybe drones would work in much the same way, right? You could have drones paying for charging. You could have people paying for sending. I've seen in, I think it was Carrefour here the other day, some drones with the cameras on the bottom. They're like really super high class stuff that can go out like 8 kilometers or something. Very, very cool. Maybe I want to do that, but I don't want to buy the drone. It's pretty expensive. So I can just pay for micropayments to use the drone's camera for an hour or something. And nobody else even needs to be involved. The owner can be somewhere else. They don't have to worry about it. They can be very confident that their drone is getting paid, and hence they're getting paid for me using it. IOTA also will be very important, we believe, in the upcoming Industry 4.0. This is a huge topic, especially here in East Asia, where a lot of manufacturing is, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan, China. We've talked with many companies in these places about it, and it can provide the same kind of security that we talked about a few minutes ago with the OTA updates for cars, but also for manufacturing, right? So it could be very, very important to know in the future who actually was the responsible party for, let's say, issuing a command to a machine. Well, if your machine in your manufacturing, in your factory, could read its commands from the Tangle, then those commands can't go anywhere, right? They're stuck in this immutable ledger, and so anybody can come in and audit it later and see who authorized a certain machine to do a certain thing. So I hope you get the flavor here, right? IOTA and our concept of it is that it works across this super wide variety of industries. It is a platform to build stuff on, right? It is not a solution for X industry. It is a general platform. You can build all kinds of things on it. So here are some examples of the Industry 4.0 automation stuff in the real world. This was at an expo a couple of weeks ago in Germany. The top left one, very cool, probably my favorite one, is an IOTA-powered cocktail mixer. So you can pay it IOTA tokens, and it will mix your cocktail for you in real time. No human intervention necessary. And we also have brought on board the CDO of Fujitsu Europe as one of our supervisory board members. And Fujitsu has been involved building all kinds of tools for IOTA, for measuring stuff from sensors and all kinds of interesting, very technical things that I don't necessarily need to get into, but very, very important for Industry 4.0 going forward. So here's another use case, and this has probably been our biggest hit so far, I guess, with partners. It's called the data marketplace. It's a very interesting way to think about data. Remember, we talked at the very beginning of the presentation about data silos and what would happen if you could share data. So the data marketplace is a platform where you can just do just that. You can share your data on the data marketplace, and better yet, you can even get paid for it. So the data marketplace is basically a web portal, and it's a proof of concept, right? So this is not something that we're marketing as a product or anything. Again, these are just ideas and concepts that we hope other people will pick up and run with. But the data marketplace is basically a web platform where you log in. You can see which sensors or which data providers are available, and you can click through to them, and you can buy a data stream, or maybe sometimes somebody would provide it for free to you. So cool examples that we have talked about and used so far are something like the weather sensor or air quality sensors. And we actually have a proof of concept from Taiwan from someone here, Elman. I'm not sure where he is, but he's built a prototype called an airbox that hooks up to the data marketplace. And the airbox transmits something like pollution levels and temperature data and all this stuff. Now, typically, if I'm a homeowner or apartment dweller or whatever, I don't really have much incentive to go get one of these things and stick it outside my building, right? It's kind of like a waste of time and money for me. But that data could be really useful for somebody like the EPA who wants to be able to know more accurately in real time around the city how the air is doing. So the data marketplace could allow somebody like the EPA to monetize that data and to convince somebody like me or you to go buy an airbox and stick it on the side of our house because we could get paid for that data. And here's the slide I mentioned. So we've got something like 70 or so organizations that are in the process of working with and playing with and doing ideation with the data marketplace concept. So it's a very, very well received and well liked concept in a lot of different industries. You can see, and we've done a lot of stuff with it, right? Hackathons and workshops and all this kind of stuff. So these are the kind of things that we're very interested in doing with a wider audience. And you can go to data.iota.org and check it out. So Smart City Data Marketplace, that's one thing. You could even take this to, there's so many ways to look at all this stuff, right? One other way you could look at it is as an agricultural data marketplace. And I know there have been some blockchains built specifically around this, but you don't need a specific token just to track agricultural data if you can do it with an existing, wider, standardized platform like IOTA, right? And so here's a company in Norway that says, due to use of crypto technology like IOTA, we can send data directly from sensors to the cloud. And of course, they don't really mean cloud, but they mean Tangle. And then the farmer can also get paid for the data. So here's some useful agricultural data. Typically, it would just be lost because farmers don't want to keep track of all that. That's a pain in the butt. But now they can get paid for it. Great. So we can keep it. We can share it. We can let other people innovate with it. So this is exactly what I've been talking about through the whole presentation, right? It's really about getting this IOTA to this standardized platform that works cross-industry for people with smart machines, with smart technology. Here's another example of it. My data, and we've been looking at GDPR internally as a big opportunity for IOTA. I know a lot of blockchains are. GDPR, of course, is the new privacy regulations in Europe. And something like IOTA, it really enables and empowers individual people to have control over their data, right? So it's no longer about you go to a website and you see the little banner pop up and says, like, we track your cookies. OK, great, that's fine. But the important stuff, my data, I really want to be able to control it myself, right? I don't want to have to go to some bank and release all my data to them so they can verify who I am. Ideally, I would just give them, here's my ID. Just you can accept it because it's part of some system. And they don't need to know every detail about me and my wife and my family, right? They can just, we can have a system in place that works for GDPR where your data can be owned and controlled by you, the end user, the citizen. So this is definitely something that we're working on, and I was going to go to, I think I had these out of order. Yeah, we've actually been working on this together with, recently announced with UN Ops. And so this is one thing that they're very interested in is about tracking identities and doing all sorts of optimizations with their people in the field, right? And you can imagine UN Ops teams are not typically in places where there's like 4G and Wi-Fi and all this stuff, right? They're kind of out in the field, and they need some sort of localized way to be able to manage that data and manage those people. So I hope you've come with me on this sort of journey through all these different industries and topics and stuff. But this is our vision. That's what I'm trying to impart, and I hope it's worked. So I talked just for a minute about the IOTA Foundation. So we're a Gemeinnützige Stiftung based in Germany. Well, I shouldn't say based. Our headquarters is in Germany. It's a nonprofit organization. One of our founders is very adamant that we're not a German organization, even though we're registered in Germany. We are, in fact, a global organization. All of our employees and people that we work with are all around the world. I actually live here in Taipei. I'm a local. Even though I'm the head of engineering and our headquarters is in Germany, we don't really think of it that way. So we've got, I think we're probably right about 60 employees right now, and we definitely will have 100 by the end of the year. We're recruiting very fast. We've got, I would say, 3 or 4 offices set up right now. Some of these are still in progress. Singapore and Taipei are still in progress. They're coming later this year. And we have just recently started hiring our first employees here for the Taipei office, so very happy about that. We have $200 million in funding so far. We're the first nonprofit in Germany that was fully funded by a crypto token. We've also been bringing on some big names and some very helpful people to our organization as part of the supervisory board, so they sort of have oversight over us to make sure that we're not doing anything out of line. And they're involved sort of at a higher level to make sure the organization is what it is and does what it says it does. And very importantly here, you can look at some of the names, right? We've got the CDO of Volkswagen, the CDO of Volkswagen, the CDO of Fujitsu, and Richard Soley, who's from OMG, the object management group. He's a very big name in standardization, right? And that's what IOTA is all about. That's what I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, is building a standardized platform for the IoT, for the economy of things. And we really hope some of these people will be a great help in getting us there. Yeah, of course, we've got a lot of partners. I already mentioned all this stuff, so we do work with all kinds of corporates, academics, NGOs. We're very happy to work with anybody who wants to innovate in this space. And like I mentioned already, we're a co-creation hub, so we like to bring these kind of ideas to a place where everybody can work on them in the open and co-create and share ideas and data and source code back and forth. We really love that, and we're a big fan of permissionless innovation. We believe it is the future. So, OK, last one. I think this is the last one. The Ecosystem Development Fund is recently opened as of yesterday, I believe, open for business. It has, I believe, if I remember correctly, somewhere like $30 million in funding to give out to grants for individuals, for small startups, to help people that are interested in IOTA get their ideas to markets. So let's co-create the backbone for the Internet of Everything. Thanks.
Thank you, Edward.